Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Starkey Farmstead. So today's video, we're going to be talking about NPK and synthetic commercial fertilizers. We're going to talk about why we add those to our garden, and does that actually make our food more nutritious? That is really the question. Why in the last 100 years has our food become less nutritionally dense? Why and how can we correct that? So I'm going to show you guys my tomato plants behind me. I've got a 1-year no-till organic setup, and I've got a 2-year no-till organic setup, and we're going to compare and contrast the differences in those plants. But before we get to that segment, let's talk about synthetic fertilizers, and could that possibly be one of the reasons our food is no longer nutritionally dense? So when people talk about food, when I was growing up, I heard sayings like, food is medicine. You are what you eat. So my question is, where did all the nutrition go? Is it that our soils are depleted of nutrients and minerals? Or is it that somehow we're blocking our plants from being able to uptake the nutrients that are actually found in our soil? There are a lot of studies right now out in the world that you can look up for yourself that will talk about how synthetic commercial fertilizers actually damage your soil. One of the things that they do is they can raise your pH. They can leave behind salt, and they actually kill earthworms and other healthy bacteria and fungi that are naturally found in your soil. So they not only do they give your plants a boost of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, they actually boost your plant up to a really fast growth, but then they kill the soil microbiology in your soil. So it makes you become dependent on that product. So our goal here at Starkey Farmstead is to never use synthetic commercial fertilizers. So we're growing a 1/4 acre market garden on clay soil with never using commercial fertilizers, pesticides, or fungicides. So my question is, if your soil is so deficient in minerals and nutrients that you can't produce plants without synthetic fertilizers, then how do your fruits and vegetables you're growing have any nutrients at all? Because synthetic fertilizers, 90% of them only provide 3 nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So where are you going to get your iron, your B1? Where are you going to get your calcium and all of those micronutrients that your body needs to grow healthy? So if you're having to add NPK to your garden just to get a plant to come out of the ground, because you're like, well, if I don't have fertilizer, my plants won't grow. Okay, I understand that. So your soil is either depleted or your nutrients are locked up. So if you add NPK, you grow this beautiful plant. Is there actually any nutrients in the food that you're growing? I mean, I'm being very serious, and I'm asking you to think through what I'm saying. Like, you've had to add synthetic chemicals to grow the plant, but where are the nutrients, minerals, and micronutrients coming from that you and your family actually need? If you can't get NPK from your soil, can you get any of those others? It's definitely a question you need to be asking yourself. Now, I don't want to just ask you a question and make you think about what I'm saying, and then you be like, okay, so I'm adding NPK, and my soil probably doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to grow a healthy plant, a nutrient-dense plant. for my family and I. So the next question would be, how do you fix that? Well, guys, it does take time, but I can honestly tell you, if you want to produce nutrient-dense foods, it doesn't matter what the plant looks like or how much that plant actually produces. The real issue is below the soil. So a lot of people want to feed the plant NPK, that kind of stuff, like you're giving it synthetic fertilizers to grow the plant. But what you aren't actually doing is feeding the soil. So you feed your plant, but you never feed your soil. So how do you feed the soil, right? Because I don't want to get you thinking and then leave you hanging for the rest of the day where you're just kind of depressed because you're realizing that the food you're growing for your family doesn't have the nutrition that your family actually needs. So how do you ensure that your plants are going to be nutrient dense? Well, you have to feed your soil. So I think a lot of people do not realize and probably don't care about what goes on under your soil, okay, or under the dirt in the soil. What you're looking for is a 1-to-1 ratio of fungi to bacteria. Okay, so the fungi and the bacteria, the protozoa, other things going on, all of that, all of those organisms are working to convert nutrients and minerals found in your soil to plant soluble nutrients. Okay, so what do I mean? You need bacteria and fungi in the soil to go through the soil, picking up nutrients, micronutrients, and minerals, converting those to a water-soluble form that your plants can then uptake to grow the plant and add nutrients to the food. So if you're gardening and you have bare soil, the sun is going to bake your soil. It's going to kill your good bacteria and your fungi. Okay, it just is. If you walk through the woods, you're never going to see bare soil. In fact, walk through your yard, something's growing everywhere you put your foot. Whether you consider that a weed or grass, it does not matter. Nature does not allow bare soil, and it doesn't for a reason, guys. So the way that most people garden is completely opposite of the way that food naturally grows. So if you're tilling and leaving your soil bare, you are going to have to add synthetic fertilizers to grow anything in that situation. You just are. Even if you till, even if you will cover your garden with a heavy mulch and add in good compost, worm castings, and rabbit manure, you're feeding the soil, okay? But the important thing is keeping that soil covered, okay? You cannot allow the sun to hit your soil directly, or it's gonna just kill all your bacteria and all your fungi. So, what we're looking for in the no-till, what you're actually looking for, guys, is the ability to feed your soil. And I'm gonna keep saying that. I don't wanna feed my plants with NPK in a synthetic fertilizer. And the reason is I'm going to do more damage than good. It doesn't matter how big a plant is or how much food it produces. It matters how nutrient dense that food is, because food is medicine. So what we've got going on here are pumpkins. So the way that I grow my pumpkins is to feed my soil. So I make sure that I'm adding a compost, a cold manure like rabbit manure. I'm making sure that I'm keeping my soil covered, that my soil is wet, and then I allow the fungi and the bacteria that is in my soil to convert over the worm castings, the manure, the compost, all of that over into plant soluble nutrients. Now, if you're working on property that has never been gardened or formed like this 1/4 acre that we have here, at least for the last 25 years, it has had nothing growing on it other than grass, okay? So if you're working on property like that, or property that has been heavily tilled and heavily covered in synthetic commercial fertilizers, fungicides, and pesticides, you're going to be very low on microbiology in that soil. And that's okay, because you'd be amazed at how fast you can change that trajectory. And one way to do it, guys, is to keep your soil covered, add worm castings, fish emulsion, lots and lots of compost. I'm not sure how people can actually garden without animal inputs. My biggest thing here at Storky Farmstead this year is doing something called nutrient catch cycles. What I mean is, I have small livestock on our 2-acre farmstead. So what I'm doing, and I always have done, but now I'm really focusing in on it, is I am growing a lot of fruits and vegetables solely for our rabbits and our chickens. And so what I'm doing is I'm feeding them from the garden that they themselves are helping me to grow, okay? So I'm feeding them the food from the organic garden. Then they poop. So if you are what you eat, I want these guys to eat the best food possible with as high nutrient levels as I actually can get them at this point. So these guys are going to eat that amazingly nutrient-rich food, right? They're going to eat it. They're going to poop. So obviously, you got it. Their poop is so full of nutrients. And I'm going to take that poop and I'm going to do several things with it. I'm going to be honest. Like, you might as well just call me the manure lady, because I love poop. I'm going to take that poop. I'm going to layer it into my worm bins, because my worms are what they eat. And if my worms eat nutrient-dense rabbit manure, then when they poop out their poop, called worm castings, they're going to be more nutrient-dense than what you can buy anywhere else. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to use the rabbit manure in the worm bins, right, to make worm castings. I'm going to use the rabbit manure in the garden as a side dress, as a fertilizer. I'm going to turn the rabbit manure into basically poop tea, and I'm going to spray my plants down in the evening as a body warmer, right? It'll be a pest deterrent, it'll be a fertilizer, but it'll be a foliar spray. I'm also going to take that rabbit poop and I'm going to let my chickens convert it into a compost mixed with their poop. So now I've got this really high power, nutrient dense compost that again is going back into the garden. So I'm catching the nutrients, because as I amend my soil and my fungi and bacteria levels get closer and closer to that 1-to-1 ratio, as those guys increase, they're now taking the nutrients that have always been in my soil, and they're converting those nutrients into plant soluble nutrients. So now my plants are pulling nutrients from the soil that I need to be healthy, and they're growing themselves in the food that my customers, my animals are going to eat. Now, if all my fruits and vegetables leave my property, I'm going to lose some nutrients, right? Right. So some of those plants go back to feeding the animals. And then the animals poop. I grab that poop, do all my cool little things with the poop, put it back into the garden, and now I'm catching my nutrients and I'm recycling them, guys. I'm recycling them back into the soil, okay? Because when the worms eat the rabbit manure and poop out their castings, they're going to add, are you ready for this? They are going to add fungi, bacteria, and protozoa to the castings. They themselves are going to eat it. It's going to go through their digestive tract, and those little worms are going to poop out the bacteria and fungi that I need for my soil, so my plants can uptake the nutrients that is already in my soil. So I'm doing all these really cool systems, but the whole point is to grow nutrient-dense food. It doesn't do me any good to grow 500 pounds of tomatoes if you have to eat 5 tomatoes to equal the nutrients that my mom and dad would have gotten from a tomato 60 years ago. Doesn't do me any good. So that's what I'm talking about. Your soil is not depleted. It's not. Your soil has everything that it needs. The problem is you've been working against it. So you need to get your soil covered. You need to stop with the synthetic commercial fertilizers, pesticides, and fungicides. Is it gonna hurt? Maybe a little. It's gonna be like a visual slap in the face. You're gonna be like, oh my God, I listened to this lady on YouTube and my garden is a friggin' mess. But guys, I'm telling you, fixing to show you with proof how quickly you can amend that soil. But you have got to stay the course. You have got to make up your mind that you want highly nutrient food, okay? The Bible says a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. So you can't be a fence sitter in this discussion. You have to be like, you know what? I really want my food to be nutritionally dense. I understand that most of my health problems and the behavior and health problems of my children are stemming from the food that we're eating. There is no nutrients in the food that you're feeding your family. That is why I run sick. That is why most people are depressed. That is why so many people have emotional, physical, psychological issues. I know I have a master's in special education, and 20 years ago, they knew this. When I was working on my master's degree, they knew how much food was affecting children, okay? But the powers that be only care about the money. And there's more money in pharmakeia than there is in them showing you how to healthily grow your food. So if you're worried about your kids' behavior, if you're worried about your health, if you're worried about even the meat that you eat, because it doesn't matter if you're herbivore, omnivore, or carnivore, this video applies to you. Because even if you wouldn't touch one of these vegetables, the vegetables I'm growing feed the meat that I eat. Because you are what you eat. So if you're getting your meat from a big box store and all they've ever been fed is Moncito, Modesto, I don't even know. I mean, like, I stay away from them people with like, you know, like they're a vampire. If they're just being fed cracked corn that has been modified genetically and is full of pesticides and herbicides, and you're getting cattle that have been injected with every antibiotic known to man to keep them on their feet until they butcher them, then that's what you're taking into your body. In all honesty, I'm being very serious. It's so much deeper than you guys realize. I don't just know teal because it's a niche or I think it's cool or it makes me stand out. I know teal because I was tired of being sick. I know teal because I understood deep in my heart that there had to be a way to grow food without buying all these inputs and literally destroying the skin of the earth. Like, there has to be a way to do it. The cool thing is along this journey, I'm actually learning that the nutrients that I've needed the entire time are in my soil. But because of the chemical fertilizers and the bare soil and the ways that we form, we've basically blocked ourselves from being able to access those nutrients. We have blocked our plants from being able to access those nutrients. Bad on us. Shame on us. We can change, guys. Just because Granddaddy and Papa did it like this with a tractor and a bunch of tillers does not mean that you have to stay that course. My parents are 80 and almost 82. They will probably, because they're extremely healthy, they're on no medications, they look amazing. If you guys have never seen Pawpaw Sammy and Allie Bugs' YouTube channel, check it out. My dad's 81 and he can outwork me. But he grew up sharecropping in rural Biloxi with incorporating animals and plants with no chemical add-ins, right? And I really believe that him and my mother still have their faculties, all of them, from mental to physical, all of it, because of the way that they were fed as children. Okay, so it's super duper important that you watch this video. Watch it a couple of times. Go back and look at our playlist. We'll show you how to make your own synthetic fertilizers. I say synthetic. We'll show you how to make your own organic fertilizers. Keep your money in your pocket. Thank you for rowing in our boat, letting us row in yours. Enjoy the next couple of minutes as I show you the difference between 1 year of no-tilling and organic regenerative gardening versus 2 years, and how much there's a difference in the plants. But like I said, it doesn't matter about plant size, guys. Size doesn't always matter. It matters about nutrition. Guys, be blessed, eat healthy, heal yourself. God bless you. Why our food in today's society has less nutrients than they did 100 years ago. And there's a lot of studies that actually prove what I just said. So my question is, why? Where are all the nutrients going? Now, that is a big topic with a lot of answers. But what we can talk about today is it comes down to the fact that the nutrients are there in your soil. So your soil is not nutrient depleted. What's actually happening is your plants can no longer access those nutrients. So I'm going to turn the camera around real quick and I'm going to show you 2 different tomato setups. One is a 1-year-old soil amending. The other one is 2 years of soil amending. So what you're looking at right now is tomatoes set up on a trellis, obviously. But these tomatoes are in soil that has been amended for 1 year. And when I say amended, I mean no synthetic commercial fertilizers, fungicides, or pesticides. The soil has been untilled. It has been in a heavy mulch and a sustainable water system. Okay, so my goal is to get my roots as deep as possible in this clay soil. Now here at Starkey Farmstead, we are farming on top of a very hard packed red clay. Now, like I said, this soil here that you're looking at where all these tomatoes are has been amended for 1 year and 1 year only. Now, something I want you to notice is even though the plants are small, they are producing quite nicely. We also intercropped through here with basil, some peas, tomatoes. Back here we actually have a turnip growing at the base of this tomato plant. So you have a lot of different plants grouped together in this system. But you're not seeing, so these plants are 2 months old, but you're not seeing huge tomato plants, even though you are seeing really nice production of tomatoes. Now, when you look at this trellis, these tomatoes are planted in a system where we have been amending the soil for 2 years. So even though these trellises are side by side, guys, this side has had a little bit longer, an entire year, for the soil to begin to amend itself. So a few things I really want you to notice is the size of these plants, okay? Much larger than the other side. Something else that I want to point out is there's a lot of undergrowth going on here. Now, a lot of you would say, okay, look, you got a weed problem, Sam. But I'm not worried about the undergrowth that you see here of green popping up underneath these tomato plants. Nature put it there, so obviously it's got a purpose. It's not hurting the plants. And I'm getting some really beautiful tomato plants. So I'm just gonna leave that undergrowth there, okay? It might not be pretty to some of you, but I think we need to rethink what we consider a beautiful garden is. Bare soil is completely opposite of the way that food actually grows itself in a permaculture or a forest setup. So even though, like I said, there's some undergrowth there and it's an eyesore for some people, I've got really beautiful plants going on here. Okay, I mean, like really beautiful, a lot of flowering going on. I have tomatoes starting up. Something else I want to point out is, in this trellis system here, these guys were planted 1 month behind these guys. Okay, so huge difference. And that is really what today's video is about. When you're gonna move away from synthetic fertilizers and you're gonna start like a no-till organic regenerative garden because you want nutrient-dense food, this is how your plants are gonna start. They're going to be smaller, all right? They will produce food for you, but they're just going to be smaller. Fast forward 2 years into your organic regenerative no-till walk, and your plants begin to look like this, right? Much difference. It's a much bigger difference, guys. I mean, look at the size of these plants, right? I mean, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Look at the size of the stem. I mean, very healthy tomato plants. These guys are healthy too, but just not the same rate of growth, not the same vigorous rate of growth.